Hello, I'm Waridah Makena. I'll be taking you through Data Protection 101, and I look forward to our discussion on Saturday. So, hello again. Welcome to this year's bootcamp. If you're interested in data protection, cybersecurity, the career paths that are in this field, then this video is for you, and I hope it's useful. So I've gone through the overview of the course. So the next thing is looking at data protection laws, who are data subjects, what are their rights and why this matters. We'll look into the career, we'll look into how data is collected and processed. So this is basically looking at what happens in practice and what is the law. And definitely we all know that even if there is a law in an institution, whether it is a school, a workplace, it doesn't always mean that that is the exact thing that will happen in real life, in practice. So this is only something to look forward to and to discuss when you're talking about data protection. Now we'll finally look into the myth about data protection and trying to hide something, right? Data privacy and trying to hide something, and whoever has control over your data. And finally, we look at the data protection commissioners and the enforcement of data protection laws. So, who is between the data subjects and the data controllers and processors? We'll talk about those three words and what they mean during our lecture. Now, this is not really a lecture in the technical term of the word. It's more the start of a discussion, really, because when we talk about data subjects, we usually mean every single person on earth, if I can say that. Because whether your data has been collected digitally or manually, then you're a data subject. Why? Because at that moment, you no longer have control over your data. What you have instead is pathways on how you can control then how the other person or the entity that has your data uses the data finally, or maybe even erases the data. So, excuse me. So, at what points in our day to day lives can we become data subjects? When you sign up for a newsletter, is one. When you use a smart device or a smartphone. When you walk past a CCTV camera, whether in the neighborhood, your own apartment building, randomly in town, right? And all these places where we leave our data can use our data either for our benefit or for our disadvantage, or just in neutral ways, really, right? Because looking at it in a neutral perspective, if I walk past a CCTV camera where thousands and thousands of people walk, maybe nothing will ever happen. Maybe at some point, even that data will be deleted, right? As is expected by the law, that at some point your data must be deleted, or you can't keep data forever and ever and ever unless you're the government. But yeah, we'll talk about those edge cases hopefully at some point. But for now, you can think of this as a starting point, a foundation per se of data protection, how our careers align with it, how data protection affects us as data subjects, excuse me again, and finally, what to do about it, right? So, some of the challenges we usually have once you've subscribed to that email, left your name, email address, maybe even a date of birth, because why not? If you're giving everything, might as well. Some of the challenges we can encounter is, first, we don't even know that there are rights surrounding us giving out our data. Secondly, I simply want to text a friend, right? But I need to go through WhatsApp's sign up to give my phone number, my full name, my all this information, right? My phone number. And these three examples are part of what we call personal data, which is protected. Now, if I start uh, signing up to a service or a mobile money account and I'm being asked about my religion, my ethnic background, my health status, if maybe I'm looking up a loan, right, or an insurance, maybe. That is very sensitive data and it has a higher risk threshold, or rather, regulations require companies who might be the controllers of the data or the processors of the data to, exercise more caution when it comes to that specific data. Now, some other challenges are more on the poor enforcement. Even if your rights are violated, sometimes the complaints really lead to action in terms of data protection authorities. And finally, there are two situations here. First is the technical language used in privacy policies. Secondly, is the fact that privacy policies are majorly written in English. So these are two issues that, number one, if I'm educated enough, I might not understand a privacy policy or what a company is doing with my data based on the fact that I didn't go to law school. So I don't understand the legal jargon. Or I never went to school. I don't know how to read or write, but I do need this service. But since I don't speak English, I just agree to whatever is being said. Right? Now, these are just a tip of the iceberg issues, but they are more general. So it's a good starting point in understanding the challenges that we have. And for example, if you're a guardian working in this space, you're protecting other people's data, right? So if we understand the challenges uh, in regards to data subjects, it's easy for us in our roles or when we move towards different roles in the privacy and protection sector to understand, okay, what is my role here and how can I protect other people's data? How far can I go in being mindful or thoughtful about how I work, how I handle other people's data, what I use it for, right? And that is part of being a data processor. Or company A sells phones. They enlist company B to collect the names, emails, addresses, phone numbers, maybe even ID cards, right? Of the people buying their phone numbers. Now, this company that ends up collecting all this information will be the data processor of the company that is buying cell phones, or that is selling cell phones. So, as a processor, you can only do what the data controller, now the company that sells the phones, wants you to do with the data. You can't start bringing up your own uses or ways to handle the data. Now, as the controller, you have even more risk, right? Because you have to ensure that the processor doesn't start using or handling the data in an inappropriate way. And on your side, you have to ensure that you have the data processing agreements in place to ensure that even if people's data is used inappropriately or leaked by the processor, you have mitigation actions, right? You can go to court, they can pay fines, all those things. So I won't really go too deep into the technical aspects. This is an introductory session to help each of us maybe find a starting point at whatever section that we are in, right? Now, for example, I got interested in data protection from coming from a legal background. And, you know, what I have on the screen here is similar because from cybersecurity to privacy or governance, risk, and compliance to privacy, or from data IT roles to privacy, you can find ways in how you interact with data, personal data in your current role or your current area of study, and then figure out how, based on the principles that are here, right? There are many more principles, and again, I refer you to the readings that I shared with you. Based on these principles, how can we protect people's data, right? I'll go to career alignment, and what you'll notice is more and more African countries are involved in data protection, and enforcement actions are being taken at an unprecedented level. Or rather, they are a bit, they're increasing. They're increasing more so than it was in the past years, right? So with that comes the demand for privacy professionals. In other areas, for example, in AI, it's a developing field, it's a high growth field. Data is also being used, personal data is being used there, and we have to find ways to protect it, to handle it with care. Because what you see is just random pieces of data, but at the other side, there's a human being will be affected if that data is leaked or used appropriately. Again, if data is used to group a certain profile of people, what that does is it helps in undemocratic practices, marginalizing others. So we really have to be careful in the ways that we look at data. But more importantly, it gives us a a starting point of, oh, so this is how I interact with data, and this is how I can ensure that it is protected. As I've mentioned, the aim of this video is basically to start off or help further in exploring data protection. And I'll say this, you can start here with this video, you can start with the data protection resources I shared. You can continue on by learning about different privacy frameworks, develop the soft and technical skills that you need. And you can even start contributing to open source projects. That's how you now continue the technical skills or build up your technical skills. Again, always, if you're in internship in a job, always talk to other people in other fields, right? Talk to the people in IT, talk to the customer service people. They handle data. So they also have a way of sharing information with you about data protection issues, right? Always explore other sources and material, including news. Now, we've talked about principles, and examples of principles are, for example, having informed consent. I've given you my data, this is what you'll use it for, and for this long, and for this purpose. This is something that companies need to be clear on. They can't change midway. Uh, yes, they collected your data so that they can send you a newsletter. They can't suddenly start um, subscribing you to different other things, or selling your data, or sharing your data with someone they think you'll be interested in, right? In their newsletter. So these are things that are very clearly drawn in the law, and in practice, depending on how big the problem is or how big the situation is, it can be publicly announced or not. If it's a big company, these issues are far easier to find out. But for smaller companies, it's not. And this is where we should always be careful and pushing for transparency where necessary. Now, your data is collected in different ways, and even my data is also collected in different ways. The issue now becomes, you've given a supermarket your data so that you can have a discount at some point, right? That supermarket is not only collecting your data for that purpose, they will aggregate that data to find out the most popular products, what they can sell you, what they can sell a certain a certain profile or group of people, for example, and at what times is this product useful. So it's up to us to really understand that our data is in our hands, and it's up to us to, for example, understand that, supporting privacy education, sharing information about how we can protect our data is important, right? Now, you'll find that you might give information to one of these initiatives, but it ends up here. Data brokers selling and buying your data, governments, profiling you, figuring out who went to a protest, why they in a protest, if they can be arrested, all these things. Corporate outreach is where a company takes your data for one purpose, but it starts using it for other purposes as well. So that's also something that is crucial to understand. And then, yes, a very important thing that comes up is, okay, if you're not giving someone your data, you're hiding something. Not really. Once I give out my email to a random newsletter or social media company, what if it closes the next day? It might not tell me if it deleted my data, right? It might just end up selling my data or transferring my data to third parties without telling me. And this is really about control of your data and what it is being used for. Because at the end of the day, it will predict big things like elections, loans, insurance premiums. If your insurance knows your health status, it can give you a different premium to other people. This is contested a lot in the insurance industry, but looking at it from a data perspective, it's a big problem as well. So even as far as tracking your physical movements, that can happen with location based apps, you know, which is a bit crazy because sometimes if you're working for a company, you might end up realizing that you are only selling a game, but the game wants access to the contact list, you know, and you are very concerned as to why that is possible, right? Another example could be you simply signed up for a community event. Suddenly all this data is being collected for a specific purpose that, the government simply wants to know how many people are undocumented in that area, and they find that information just randomly. So you always have to be careful about that. Now, for data protection commissions, these are usually authority institutions that are provided for with the data protection regulations. And some of their work is basically to audit all these companies that are handling data, to investigate complaints and breaches, to enforce law through fines and or legal action. So one of the example is in Kenya. A while ago, the Data Protection Commissioner actually put out a warning about people sharing their biometric data with WorldCoin. Now cost, the case has become so big that it went to the High Court, and WorldCoin was asked to delete all the data and it was suspended. A different case is with the South Africa Data Protection Commission, where WhatsApp has ended up not being in line with the regulations, so it's being asked to review its operations. And this usually happens as a data protection officer. It's upon us to look into the ways that we will be using the data, understand whether the law allows us to do this. And the key things to understand in every data protection law of every country is what are the data subject rights, what are the principles that that companies need to follow. These are the controllers and processors, the enforcement mechanism, and finally being able to understand how all that affects how you end up handling people's data and the processes you put in place to secure that data now. For example, not giving everyone access to a database, just allowing only developers, and even within the developer teams, having specific people have full access, read access, only write access, view access, all those things. Yeah, and finally, as we head to the end of the discussion, I hope that this was a useful first step. As always, what I always think when exploring a new topic is you can take this presentation, look at the key things I've highlighted. If you want to learn about the USA, just use these headings: how data is collected and processed in the USA. You'll find out the laws in USA. The same for Uganda, the same for all these different countries, right? And as we reach the final step, thank you again for participating. I look forward to your questions. Feel free to go through the document resources, the Word document. If you have questions, feel free to ask. And even though I'm the one facilitating this video, there are still things that I'm exploring. There are still things that I'm learning about data protection, about data privacy. For example, I'm learning about privacy ops, so privacy operations. This is a new thing for me, right? So this is always a point of learning, a point of always understanding. There's always the next step, the next step. So start where you can and see you soon.